What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? This is going to be a quick discussion on the aesthetics of the male and female form. And I'll attempt to answer the question of who is more beautiful, men or women. Now, anyone who's ever said that women are the fairer sex has obviously never heard of the family courts. But seriously, can we really say which of the genders is more aesthetically pleasing due to our own cognitive and social biases? Now, first off, just looking at the semantics of the commonly asked question, who's more beautiful, who's more attractive, when using the word beautiful, it is a feminine word. And as much as feminists and all the intersectional people don't like the idea of gendered language, language is gendered. I mean, this is actually one of my other videos, but I mean, even if you started calling feminist handsome, I'm sure a lot of them would get offended. They would want to be called beautiful if they're females, and males want to be called handsome. Now, looking at the semantics of these words, the word beauty is applied to many things, many objects and other phenomena in the world. For example, besides from calling a woman beautiful, you might call a sunset beautiful or a waterfall beautiful or a painting or sculpture or some type of art beautiful, whereas you would never refer to a sunset, oh, that's a really handsome sunset. Oh, it just not in the English lexicon. And then looking at the word handsome, it's really alluding to the human doing versus human being type of dichotomy, where somebody might as well just say, oh, those are some hands. Come over here and do some work for me. Yeah, you look real handsome. So right there, we can't use the word beauty or attractiveness because specifically the female is designed to be attractive to the male and the male is designed to be attractive to the female. And this kind of goes into how women have kind of pulled the wool over men's eyes in a sense, and making men think that women are the sexual prize. When in actuality, if women didn't find men sexually attractive, then humanity wouldn't exist because women wouldn't have sex with men. So that whole question right there is kind of mute. So if we look at it from a biological basis, we can see that there's some biases against men that are ingrained in our genetics or psychology, however you want to look at it. But basically, since men have a higher sex drive, men are going to be more likely to initiate sex with women, thereby making it appear as though women are more desired for sex. And in a sense, you can say they are desired more for sex, but that doesn't objectively prove that women are more aesthetically appealing than men are. All it proves is that men have a higher sex drive than women. Then you have innate in-group preferences as well, where women and men are both more likely to be attracted to women. And my theory on this is the boob theory, because it basically has something to do psychologically with the fact that breastfeeding is a thing, and, all humans throughout history have had to breastfeed up until they invented formula. And I guess some auxiliary evidence to back up this theory is the fact that you're more likely to see gay men that associate with straight women than you are to see lesbian women that associate with straight men. Like, you have fag hags, but you don't have something conversely with a man where it's like a straight guy that hangs out with lesbians all the time. It's not a thing. And so my theory is that, it's a biological necessity that all human beings are attracted to breasts in a certain psychological sense, or a prehistoric sense, if you want to look at it that way. Now, you could say that this third thing is biological or psychological. I tend to think that it's a bit of both, but you have solipsism versus competition, because women being more solipsistic, they're more likely to see themselves in another woman, in a woman that people say is attractive. Women might say, oh, well, I have some of her features, or I'm similar to her in some way. Where as a man is more likely to look at another man and say that he's a competition. So he doesn't want to compliment the man. He doesn't want to look at the man and say, oh, hey, maybe he is attractive. Maybe he can get some women. And then it's saying, oh, he's ugly. Look at him. All goofy over there, looking all goofy. I mean, that's how guys are. They're not going to say, oh, yeah, my arms kind of look like that too, or my chest looks like, oh, he looks like a sucker. And then that kind of brings us to the social bias, which is similar to that last argument, which is the no homo argument, where you notice that men almost always caveat even approaching giving a man a compliment on his looks or attractiveness with the I'm not gay, no homo, but I can kind of see why women would like him. Where women will just say, oh, she's pretty. Oh, she looks good. Oh, she's got a nice body. They don't have that same, oh, I'm not a lesbian, but she's got some nice boobs. They're pretty big. I'm not a lesbian, though. You never hear women say that. And so this is another bias that allows this myth that women are more aesthetically pleasing than men, because men are not going to say, oh no, men are hot. Yeah, look at that guy in his briefs. God damn, if I was a woman, I would totally do him. Like guys just don't think like that, and they're not going to say that in public. And so women get to say, oh well, we're so hot, and oh look at us in our mini skirts and da 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 da. And men are going to say, oh no, look at him. Oh yeah. So we can kind of see that all these classifications so far are subjective in a sense and based on our own innate biological instincts, or things that have been passed down socially to us and are in our psychology. So one of the classic arguments to argue for the beauty of something, the aesthetic properties of something, is the form versus function argument, which is pretty simple argument, which that goes something like a Shelby GT 500 Cobra is more beautiful, more aesthetically pleasing than a Hyundai Accent, simply for the reason that the Shelby GT 500 performs the function of a car better than a Hyundai Accent. It handles better, it goes faster, it's more aerodynamic. So therefore, someone could say with some objectivity that a Shelby GT 500 is a better looking car than a Hyundai Accent. But when it comes to the argument of form versus function with men and women, specifically when you're talking about their sexual functions, men and women's sexual functions are different. So you can't compare the sexual function of a man to a sexual function of a woman, because the sexual function of a woman is to attract men, and the sexual function of a man is to attract resources. So when you're looking at the form and function of a man, his ability to attract resources is better than the woman's ability, and the woman's ability to attract men is better than the man's ability to attract women. So again, it's kind of like these two sexual functions are not comparable enough to just say, well, hey, they do the exact same thing, but women do it better, because it's not the same thing. So you can't just argue that women are better when it comes to sexual functions because they attract men, because it goes back to the biological biases. Also, if you look at other animals in nature, for the most part, the reason why I could see that someone would argue that women are more aesthetically pleasing than men is that their secondary sexual characteristics are more visible. Because if you look at most of the memorable animals from nature, most of them have visible secondary sexual characteristics. For example, a lion in his mane, or a deer or elk with their horns, or rams, or peacocks with their feathers, with their crazy feathers, or the rooster with the thing on the top of its head. So in most, not most, but a lot of the more memorable and some would say aesthetically pleasing animals like lions and tigers and deer, that the secondary sexual characteristics are what makes it more appealing to look at. But in the same sense, socially, women are allowed to show off their secondary sexual characteristics while men are not allowed to show off their secondary sexual characteristics very much. And a lot of men's secondary sexual characteristics are abstract, such as being able to gather resources and the personality and physical traits that come along with the ability to gather those resources either from the environment or socially are abstracted from the man. Because, I mean, you could say that a guy is confident, but confidence only applies when you're in a situation where you have to tell somebody what to do or know what's going on. It's not something that just exists, which again brings us back to the human doing thing. So to say that men don't have secondary sexual characteristics, I think is a bit of a misnomer, because men do have secondary sexual characteristics. They're just more abstracted into either being able to deal with the environment or being able to deal with social situations. And again, in nature, we see that for the most part, the male is the one that's more aesthetically pleasing. Like I said, deer horns and lion manes, and those are the memorable things that you remember about other animals that you're not sexually attracted to. You remember the male for the most part. So that's just another point. Now, one function that men and women both share is the function of survival. That's the most basic function of any biological organism, is just to survive. Now, you could say to survive and reproduce, but reproduction could be argued that that doesn't specifically benefit the individual. So when we're talking about on an individual basis, the woman creating a child is not a function that supersedes the man's ability to gather resources to provide for the child. And so, again, trying to say that sexuality and survival are the same exact thing, they're very close and they're very closely related, but survival precedes sexual reproduction, because you can't sexually reproduce if you can't survive. And since men are more suited to not only survive themselves, but also to secure the survival of others around them, and since survival could be said to be the highest value of any biological organism, because all other value derives from the value of you surviving. Because if you're not alive, you can't derive any value from anything. You can't derive beauty or handsomeness from anything, because you're not here to, reap the value of that thing. So therefore, the fact that the man is more suited to facilitate survival of not only himself but others, I would put a bid in to argue that the man is actually the more aesthetically pleasing of the two genders based on the fact that survival is what necessitates value. And since men are better at providing survival, men therefore are better at providing value. And since form and function dictate what is aesthetically pleasing, that would mean that men are aesthetically superior to women. And maybe guys don't want to admit it, but it seems just logically from looking at it that it may be true. And like I said before, if women really thought that other women were hotter and sexier than men, then there would be no children and we wouldn't be here discussing this in the first place. And this just kind of boils down to a very similar type of situation where women try to pretend like they don't enjoy sex as much as men to then kind of make men feel guilty that women are giving men sex, when the fact of the matter is that women want to have sex too. And the fact of the matter is that women find men physically attractive, aesthetically appealing, otherwise they wouldn't have sex with them. So that's all I got for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Have a good day and go MGTOW.